The X-Men have created some of the most iconic heroes. However, it's important to remember that not everyone in this universe will get a powerful and shiny ability. Today on CBR, we're examining the X-Men with the worst powers.
I feel sorry for you guys.
Number 3, John Arthur Zander, aka Jazz. John Arthur Zander is another mutant with a physical mutation that doesn't help him much. Known to the mutant community as Jazz, John's only mutation is his blue skin. That really is it. Even the Office of National Emergency declared that Jazz was considered a low threat. Jazz doesn't have a long history in comics. He first came on the scene as a hopeful rapper who ended up working for Toad Boy. Following the events of M-Day, John was one of many mutants who lost his powers, in this case just the blue skin, and rounded up in a mutant camp. A fellow mutant later killed Jazz, and it does not appear that he was among the resurrected during the Krakoa era, though it's possible he was able to hide from the spotlight.
A man with a long neck.
Number 2, William Hanover, aka Longneck. Sometimes a mutant will get a power that changes how they look. Other times, their only mutation is look-based. The latter proved true for William Hanover, aka Longneck. His neck is longer than the average human's. That's it. It's enough to ostracize him from much of the human race, but not enough to give him great defensive or offensive abilities. William Hanover did not get a lucky draw in life, but he tried to make the best of it. He joined Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters and was trained among the rest. He joined Cyclops in the battle against Zorn and later was affected by M-Day's depowering. That is not the end of Longneck's sorrows, as he is currently believed to be dead.
He's so ugly!
Number 1, Steve, aka Ugly John. When it comes to unfortunate mutations, Steve, aka Ugly John, probably has the most useless. Not only does his mutation not help him, but his alias is unfortunate. Steve's mutation is simple yet disorienting. He has 3 faces squished in the front of his head. That's it. Ugly John's only mutation is his looks, which is not to his advantage. Ugly John was first introduced in New X-Men number 114, where he was saved from attacking Sentinels. This would not be his only run-in with Sentinels, as they later kidnapped him. To make matters worse, Steve was seriously wounded during the process, forcing Cyclops to kill the mutant out of mercy. During the Krakoa era, it's mentioned that Ugly John was resurrected along with many of his fellow mutants.
I don't see what's so ugly about him.
Alpha Flight! Wolverine, no!
Over the years, Marvel's X-Men have introduced countless characters, and sometimes even the most powerful of heroes fall by the wayside. Today on CBR, we're discussing the 3 most powerful of these overlooked heroes.
Still don't know me real well, do you, North Star?
North Star, aka Jean-Paul Beaubier, has been around for decades. While the hero has been around for years, it took him some time to join a hero team. Since then, North Star has worked with several teams, including Alpha Flight, X Factor, and Alpha Squadron. When it comes to heroes with all the classical powers, North Star should be at the top of the list. He has superhuman speed and can fly. Combine this with the ability to generate light and concussive blasts, and it's easy to see the potential in his powers. North Star has the makings to be a strong member of any team, if not their leader.
Banshee.
Why do you want to be named after a wailing spirit?
You might want to cover your ears.
Sean Cassidy, aka Banshee, is a powerful mutant with a long comic history. As his alias indicates, Banshee's abilities are all sonic-based. He can generate sound waves with his voice, which can be transformed into several different moves or attacks. His sonic scream can shatter objects, and his shield can protect anyone nearby. Even without his abilities, Banshee is a talented individual. He's an excellent fighter, enjoys traveling, can do undercover work, and he's even a bit of a detective. All of these qualities make him a valuable member of any team. This hero has had a bit of a rough go in the last few years. Moira killed him during the Krakoa era, only for Sean to merge with the Spirit of Variance later. Jono's body is composed of pure psionic energy. like saying he's a walking furnace. What makes this unfortunate is that Jono is not immune to the damage his body creates. The first time Chamber blew up, he also blew a hole through his chest and the lower half of his face. The blast didn't kill him, though it did change him forever. Since his first explosion, Jono has worked hard to help those around him, especially younger mutants. He knows firsthand what it is like to go through a painful awakening and hopes to spare others.
Stop fighting us!
Please, mon ami, do not force us to do this.
The X-Men are finally heading to the MCU, and fans couldn't be more excited. Today on CBR, we'll be discussing what we know so far and what could happen in the new X-Men movie.
No. I am not X-Men material at all.
What we know. X-Men are officially making their way into the MCU, and things are finally starting to move. Marvel Studios has tapped Michael Leslie to pen the script for the first X-Men movie set within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If that name sounds familiar, it's because Leslie is known for his work on The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and The Little Drummer Girl, projects that demonstrate his knack for weaving deep, layered storytelling and complex characters. The choice of Leslie also signals a focus on nuanced narratives with strong social commentary, key hallmarks of X-Men lore. For decades, X-Men stories have tackled powerful themes of discrimination, prejudice, and the quest for acceptance, using mutants as metaphors for marginalized groups. Leslie's involvement could bring fresh emotional depth to these classic elements, providing both thrilling action and thoughtful exploration of what it means to be different in a world that doesn't always welcome you.
You shouldn't have come here.
So, what's this new movie actually going to be about? While Marvel is keeping most of the plot details under wraps, an early synopsis hints at familiar territory. Charles Xavier's band of mutants stepping up to protect a world that fears and hates them. Expect core themes of identity, tolerance, and justice to take center stage as the X-Men navigate their roles as heroes in a society that sees them as dangerous outcasts. If done right, this movie could deliver a potent mix of blockbuster spectacle and meaningful social reflection, exactly what made the original comic series and early films resonate with audiences for generations. The timeline for production is still shrouded in mystery. However, industry insiders suggest that filming could begin as early as late 2025. Additionally, Disney has scheduled 2 untitled Marvel movies for release in 2025-2027, one in July and another in November, and it wouldn't be a stretch to imagine that one of these slots might be reserved for the X-Men's much-anticipated MCU debut.
I am the X-Man.
The cast. Speculation about casting has already started to swirl. Fan favorite names are popping up for key roles, with Stranger Things star Sadie Sink often mentioned as a top choice for Jean Grey. Meanwhile, Cynthia Erivo has expressed interest in portraying Storm, and fan discussions about who should embody iconic characters like Wolverine, Cyclops, and Rogue are lighting up social media. With the MCU's history of bold and creative casting choices, the eventual lineup is sure to spark plenty of conversation. 2 names that spark interesting possibilities are Anthony Mackie and Chris Hemsworth, both of whom are already beloved members of the MCU, although they are currently attached to other major roles. Mackie as Captain America and Hemsworth as Thor. It's always fun to imagine what they could bring to the mutant world if given a chance.
I'm a black man carrying the stars and stripes. What don't I understand?
Anthony Mackie. Anthony Mackie's charismatic portrayal of Sam Wilson, first as Falcon and now as Captain America, highlights his strengths: charm, leadership, and a strong moral compass. These traits could translate well to some X-Men roles. Bishop, a time-traveling mutant from a dystopian future, possesses energy absorption powers and a commanding presence. His storylines often explore themes of survival and complex moral decisions. Mackie's proven ability to balance heroism with shades of gray makes him a strong contender for this role. Bishop's tactical military background and natural leadership are a perfect match for Mackie's on-screen persona. Gambit. Known for his smooth-talking charm and kinetic energy manipulation, Gambit is a mischievous, rebellious mutant with a penchant for risk-taking. Mackie's effortless charisma and quick wit would bring a fresh, unique interpretation to the character. His southern roots would also allow him to play up Gambit's iconic Cajun flair. Chris Hemsworth. Chris Hemsworth has made a lasting impression as Thor, embodying physical power, charm, and lots of humor. His towering frame and dynamic acting style position him well for a variety of X-Men roles. Colossus is a gentle giant with the ability to transform his body into organic steel. Hemsworth's mix of warmth and physicality would make him a natural fit for the heroic and compassionate Russian mutant. His ability to convey kindness while exuding raw strength mirrors Colossus's core qualities, making him an ideal choice for the role. Sabretooth. If Chris Hemsworth wanted to explore his darker side, Sabretooth would be a perfect fit. Sabretooth is a savage, animalistic villain with enhanced strength and regenerative abilities. Hemsworth's experience with action-packed roles and his capacity for intensity would allow him to bring a fresh and terrifying edge to one of Wolverine's fiercest enemies. Avalanche. A member of the Brotherhood of Mutants, Avalanche uses seismic powers to wreak havoc. He's a rebellious character with a morally gray outlook. Hemsworth's mix of charisma, humor, and raw power would make for an engaging, complex portrayal.
Well, if there's too much weight, you lose power on the swings.
With Mackie's versatility and Hemsworth's larger-than-life persona, both could add fresh energy to an evolving X-Men universe, should Marvel ever decide to recast or expand these roles. The possibilities are as boundless as the imagination of the MCU itself.
I shall miss you, my friend.
The potential storylines. In the comics, mutants are born with the X gene, which gives them special powers, but society doesn't exactly roll out the welcome mat for them. They're often seen as outcasts and a threat. How Marvel will bring mutants into the MCU is anyone's guess, but there are some interesting possibilities. Some fans think the multiverse could be the key, with recent events like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, or the reveal of Kamala Khan as a mutant in Ms. Marvel, setting the stage for more mutants to appear. Deadpool and Wolverine could also play a major role, especially with Wolverine making his comeback. This might just be the spark that finally brings mutants into the MCU fold. Since their creation, mutants have represented marginalized communities, making the fight for their rights and recognition a central theme. This is something that's just as relevant today as it was when the comics first began. Much like how Black Panther tackled racial inequality or Captain America, the Winter Soldier dealt with government surveillance. The X-Men are the perfect group to comment on modern-day social issues. The back and forth between Professor Xavier and Magneto, one fighting for peaceful coexistence and the other pushing for more radical change, mirrors real-world debates about how best to handle injustice. Reworking this conflict into a modern context could give the MCU a fresh take on their classic rivalry, making it even more relatable to today's audiences.
You built these weapons to destroy us. Why?
As for storylines, there are plenty of classic X-Men arcs that would work perfectly in the MCU. Days of Future Past, a time travel story where mutants try to prevent a dark future, could be a great way to dive into the multiverse. It also has that classic X-Men action mixed with high stakes, which fans love. Then there's the Dark Phoenix Saga, a storyline that deals with Jean Grey's tragic transformation. Although the X-Men films have already adapted this, the MCU could give it a more faithful treatment and really build up to Jean's descent into darkness. Another wild ride could be House of M, where Scarlet Witch alters reality itself. This could lay the foundation for mutants to rise or fall in the MCU, making it a perfect launching point for future storylines. And let's not forget about Mutant Massacre, a brutal tale where the Morlocks, a group of underground mutants, are slaughtered. This storyline could really highlight the darker side of prejudice, giving the X-Men's fight a more intense edge. Plus, there's the idea of Genosha, an island where mutants are enslaved, which would tie in well with the broader political themes the MCU loves to explore. No matter which direction Marvel goes, the X-Men's arrival is sure to bring an exciting mix of action, drama, and meaningful storytelling that has been at the heart of their comics for decades. Fans are in for a thrilling ride when the mutants finally join the MCU.
Welcome to the MCU, by the way.
The X-Men's MCU debut is shaping up to be a fresh, exciting take on these beloved characters. While we still have to wait a bit longer to see it come to life, the wait looks like it's going to be worth it. Stay tuned. Things are only going to get more exciting.
Mutants! Some mutants are good and some not so much. All mutants, however, possess great powers and abilities. Something comic readers have grown accustomed to keeping up with the X-Men on paper are mutant power level classifications. From weakest to strongest, we have Epsilon, Delta, Gamma, Beta, Alpha, and the well-known Omega level. In this video, we're going to be talking about the latter. The most powerful of all mutant kind, defined properly and definitively in Jonathan Hickman's 2019 House of X, there were initially 14 confirmed Omega level mutants, which has effectively grown into a list of 25. And even though this list will continue to change and grow over time, let's take a look at and rank every current Omega level mutant. And I said current, so sorry Franklin Richards. With all that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive right into it. We begin our list with two newer and lesser known mutants, Idol and Idol III. Father and daughter respectively, they both possess the ability of precognition, allowing them to see visions of future events. Idol, known as the High Mutant Prophet, was blinded by a vision in which he saw his sentient home island, Arakko, fall to the dark, eldritch world, Amenth. His daughter, Idol III, known as the Future Seer, would unfortunately have her tongue removed and meet her demise at the hands of Tarn the Uncaring and Iska the Unbeaten. Not known for many notable feats, rather powerful in their abilities of seeing the future, Idol and Idol III rank lowest on our list. Wielder of the Alluvium Blade, Redroot is considered the voice of Arakko and embodies her as a living forest. A botanopath, Redroot possesses the ability to communicate with flora, plants, and the earth. She's also able to rot any organic material or substance. Incredibly slow and barely able to keep up at a fast walking pace, Redroot is a pure-blooded mutant with ties to nature. Redroot the Forest has yet to reveal the full extent of her powers. Lotus Logos is a member of the Great Ring of Arakko and is responsible for art, song, and poetry on the island. With the ability to speak metal creations into existence, Lotus can create unlimited amounts of metal using simply his words. Instead of constructing giant monuments and weaponry, Lotus prefers to create small items, such as daggers. With only a handful of appearances in the comics, mostly that of him seated as a member of the Great Ring of Arakko, Sobanar possesses oceanic blood, meaning his body contains an entire marine biological system that replenishes itself. Large in scale, every pun intended, and coming from a long line, there's another one, of aquatic mutants, Sobanar would prove quite formidable in combat. Lactuca the Knower, another member of the Great Ring, possesses the power of spatial awareness. They have the ability of knowing the precise location of everything everywhere at all times. Whether this ability applies solely to their own universe or to the multiverse as a whole remains unknown. Yet another member of the Great Ring, Nameless the Shapeshifter Queen, was also the acting regent of Arakko. Although not much is known about Nameless, we do know that her powers consisted of alteration and mimicry. Not only was she able to copy mutant appearances and powers, she reflected her foes in their prime. This implies that she had the potential of not only matching, but one-upping whoever's abilities that she copied. I am speaking the past tense when it comes to Nameless, as she is currently, and recently, deceased. Once sitting at the seat of law, the extremely disliked Ukesh the Bridge was challenged and defeated by Aura Sarada. You see, Ukesh possesses the ability to summon gods. Any god, anytime, with or without their willingness. After summoning 30 squabbling and self-serving gods to head the Council of Arakko, leading to the near demise of their civilization, Ukesh was challenged by Aura and defeated. Sentenced to life-sustaining dismemberment, Ukesh is just a head now and is used as a tool to weed out any rogue gods who might plague Arakko. Unafraid of going to war when deemed necessary, Aura is capable of erasing anything she looks at from existence. A vicious prosecutor and the final arbiter of law, Aura has shown some weakness in the past. Naturally, if Aura's eye is damaged, her abilities become null and void. On top of that, some entities are so powerful themselves that they're completely unaffected by her gaze, as seen in her confrontation with the Eternal Uranos. Formerly a member of the anti-mutant group the Reavers, Josh Foley would ironically acquire powers of his own. Not only would he come to realize his true nature, he would also become one of the most powerful mutants ever known, Elixir. Biokinetic, Elixir is capable of controlling biological structures at the genetic level, meaning he can instantly heal himself and others. This includes resurrection. Furthermore, as his powers have developed, Elixir can use them for harm, able to infect people with diseases or shut down someone's organs in an instant. Xylo, the first defender of the Broken Land, is a mutant that lives in the form of an insect collective. Able to appear as one being or separate into innumerable tendrils, Xylo has the ability to replenish and replace body parts. This has allowed him to live for thousands of years. Pivotal in the reconstruction of Mars, Xylo's terraforming abilities allow him to form rock into the shape of his liking. He's able to alter soil, supplying it with new and unnatural nutrients, minerals, and elements. An original member of the X-Men, Bobby Drake is one of the most familiar mutants in all of Marvel history. Iceman, over time, has cultivated his powers and grown into an Omega-level mutant. Controlling temperature and moisture, he is able to encase his body in ice, not only as a shield but to keep himself alive if need be. He's also able to create unbreakable ice constructs, which he can increase the temperature of, melting them if need be. Using moisture to augment himself into any form of any size, Iceman can also merge with large masses of water molecules, effectively using them for teleportation. He can even create sentient ice clones of himself to help out in a scrap. Effectively immortal, it was discovered that Iceman could live forever if he so desired. If his body were to get destroyed, he could simply create a new one out of all the moisture floating around in the atmosphere. Wife of Apocalypse and sister of Iska the Unbeaten, who we'll talk about in just a second here, little is known about Genesis's mutation. What her abilities are exactly have yet to be specified. However, she has been deemed even more powerful and fit than her husband. A tremendous combatant and the only candidate able to defeat the Dark God Annihilation one-on-one, Genesis also seems to possess the powers of chlorokinesis. This enables her to control all plant life within her vicinity. Sister of Genesis, Iska the Unbeaten is, well, unbeaten. Possessing the uncanny ability of unbeatability, no matter what, Iska cannot be defeated. In combat, in a foot race, a feat of strength, a bet, a vote, one-on-one in a game of Halo, Iska wins. Always.
Double kill.
Whether her victory comes fair and square at the behest of her own physical attributes, or whether it comes by way of friendly interference, luck, or happenstance, Iska remains undefeated. Although this ability seems like an OP cheat code, this does not mean that Iska is inevitable or immortal. If winning means Iska must sacrifice herself or perish, she will do so. Benet du Perry was a nobleman born in medieval France. Sent to fight in the Holy Crusades, his telekinetic mutant powers were awakened. After a visit from the Phoenix Force and being tampered with genetically at the hands of Apocalypse, du Perry became Exodus. One of the most powerful mutants alive, Exodus is described as a psionic of the highest order. With telekinetic flight, healing, force fields, concussive blasts, and intuitive aptitude, Exodus's mutant abilities only seem to get stronger when others around him show faith and confidence in his powers. Long-lost brother of Cyclops and Havoc, Gabriel Summers, aka Vulcan, is not only a mutant, but was accelerated at birth by Shi'ar technology. Sent to Earth with little to no memory remaining, Gabriel would be adopted by Moira McTaggart, and she would go on to help him cultivate his energy absorption and manipulation abilities. Possessing the powers of flight, energy blast, detection, healing, and power siphoning, Gabriel is by far the most powerful of the Summers boys. A user of magic, this mutant Daemon hybrid, Tarn the Uncaring, was one of the most ruthless mutants in all of Marvel. A sadist of the highest order, he delighted in nothing more than tormenting and perverting his victims. Recently, Tarn not only vanquished Vulcan, but did so handily, snapping his arm with ease and bashing his head in mercilessly. Able to manipulate DNA and biology with his mind, Tarn also possessed telepathy, telekinesis, teleportation, and superhuman strength. Unfortunately for Tarn, he was tricked into a battle with Magneto after Iska was tricked into betting against him. Magneto went on to use his helmet to stifle Tarn's powers before squashing his head. Aurora Monroe, codenamed Storm, is an iconic fan favorite of the X-Men franchise. A fierce leader of multiple teams of heroes, Storm has not only become the Queen of Wakanda, but she is also considered a deity by many across all of Africa. A descendant of a long line of sorceresses, her inherent power has been stated as being incalculable. Storm has even been deemed worthy of wielding Mjolnir, becoming the goddess of thunder in actuality. With all sorts of weather and nature-based powers, such as lightning, atmospheric manipulation, thermal variance, energy vision, and flight, Storm also possesses expert combat skills and is proficient in most forms of weaponry. A staple in nearly every adaptation of the X-Men, Storm has fought against and with almost any Marvel hero or villain that you could possibly think of. Generally the first name that comes to mind when discussing most powerful mutants, Magneto is a timeless character who has been an integral part of Marvel history. The master of magnetism and leader of many groups, most famously the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and the Acolytes, Magneto has also fought alongside the X-Men on numerous occasions. Widely considered one of the greatest supervillains of all times, in recent years Magneto has put his differences with Charles Xavier aside, focusing their energy on establishing a new mutant society. An adaptable survivor to his core, from World War II era Germany to battles in the cosmos, sporting his iconic helmet which prevents telepaths from entering his mind, Magneto is as impressive in capability as he is in feats. Developing control over all energies across the electromagnetic spectrum, Magneto's powers include, but are not limited to, control over all forms of magnetism, manipulation of all metal, magnetic force fields, magnetic flight, magnetic rays. He's even moved mountains and can sense metallic structures light years away. Yeah, you can understand why he's so high on this list. Absalom Mercator, simply known as Mr. M, is a mysterious and shifty mutant with almost godlike abilities. So much is unknown about this character other than that he likes to keep to himself. A manipulator of matter, Mr. M has complete control over the atomic and subatomic structures of matter and energy. This means that he can create essentially anything out of virtually nothing. He can even advance the process of evolution on a whim, although he cannot time travel or manipulate reality. Kevin McTaggart, son of Moira McTaggart, possesses the ability to warp realities. Easily burnt out by the vastness of his powers, Kevin, aka Proteus, is in need of multiple host bodies to sustain himself. Proteus can teleport and shift between realities throughout the known multiverse. He can manipulate molecules in any way that he desires, and was able to rid the surface of Mars from all radioactivity. James Braddock Jr. was a successful and handsome financial whiz and a race car driver turned criminal. Assisting his brother, Captain Britain, on occasion, Braddock would be kidnapped by Dr. Crocodile. Crocodile then went on and conducted trials and experiments on Braddock that not only rendered him insane, but aided in awakening his reality warping powers, transforming him into Monarch. Monarch can transform reality and has duplicated people, things, and even timelines out of nothing. Son of Professor X, David Haller, codenamed Legion, has become known as possibly the most dangerous mutant in the Marvel Universe. Possessing unprecedented powers, unfortunately, Legion is clinically insane. Over 200 mutants, along with their unique individual powers, aliases, and characteristics, live inside of Legion's mind, ranging from a terrorist leader called Jamail to an obese, lonely superwoman named Sally. Legion's mind is infinitely trapped inside an overpopulated sea of powerful mutants. It has been suggested that Moira McTaggart and Professor X had genetically engineered Legion's birth. At a young age, he was diagnosed with autism and began unwillingly absorbing people's minds as a child. So it's no shock that Legion developed such intense and chaotic power. Completely uncontrollable, Legion remains a wildcard and will likely stay that way for the foreseeable future. The first mutant born after the events of M-Day, the adoptive granddaughter of Scott Summers and Jean Grey, Hope Summers has yet to reach her full power potential. Originally known as the Messiah Baby with the ability to copy and manipulate the powers of any mutant within close proximity, Hope does not need to actually make physical contact with those whose powers she's copying. Hope would ultimately prove to be so powerful that when uttering the words "No more Phoenix," she went ahead and reversed the events of House of M, restoring the entire mutant race back to the way it was, which is no small feat. Quintavious Quirinius Quire, known as Kid Omega, which is just a super fun name to say by the way, is a telepathic mutant who has yet to reach his full potential. A naturally skilled telekinetic, described as yet another psionic of the highest order, Kid Omega has vastly surpassed the abilities of all other known telepaths. Befitting of the name, this Omega-level telepath at one point even evolved into a disembodied consciousness that connected itself to every sentient being on Earth, which is all kinds of trippy. At one point, Kid Omega got a glimpse of his future self, confirming that he will eventually host the Phoenix Force. However, until that day comes, the fiery entity and title of most powerful Omega-level mutant lies in the hands of the #1 entry on this list. Marvel Girl, Phoenix, or Jean Grey. Regardless of what you call her, she is one of the most iconic Marvel characters in X-Men history. Canonically presented as the most powerful Omega-level mutant ever encountered, Jean's powers have been deemed limitless in potential. Flying, moving objects, reading minds, these are all things that Jean mastered before the Phoenix Force was even just a glint in the writer's eye. Having her powers suppressed during her youth, as well as manually by Professor X, Jean has also claimed that the Phoenix Force sometimes holds her back from tapping into the full depths of her abilities. While utilizing the Phoenix Force, Jean's empathic, telepathic, and telekinetic powers are greatly amplified. She's able to travel through the vacuum of space and cross interstellar distances faster than the speed of light. She's also been granted access to the White Hot Room, home and afterlife of the Phoenix Force. From losing her mind and decimating entire planets to saving the universe on multiple occasions, Jean continues to unlock the vastness of her mind. With or without the Phoenix Force, Jean Grey unquestionably belongs at the top of this list.
The Avengers and the X-Men are the two teams that keep the world safe from outside threats. Whether they got their powers through scientific experiments, mechanical armor, or genetic mutations, both are crime-fighting forces that save the world from mass destruction on multiple occasions. But how do they stack up against each other? What would happen if the superpowered mutants of X-Men had to throw down with Tony Stark, Captain America, the Hulk, and Black Widow? Marvel's The Avengers. When they first gathered to save New York City from an alien invasion, the Avengers were not instantly a cohesive team. Their first couple of missions ended in disaster because their personalities kept clashing over personal issues. And while this tendency has yet to be resolved, see Captain America Civil War, they are still a crime-fighting team that packs a punch. The firepower of Iron Man and War Machine practically guarantees them the power of a small military force. Not to mention they have several outright mystic characters in the team, including Thor, Vision, and Scarlet Witch. And they have a Hulk. Fox's X-Men. Trained at Charles Xavier's School for the Gifted, the X-Men are largely made up of younger individuals looking for acceptance in a world that fears and rejects them. The X-Men have used their diverse mutations to fight government forces that seek to control their powers. Most recently, superpowered mutants who wish to destroy the world, and most frequently Magneto, leader of the Brotherhood of Mutants. Like the Avengers, they do tend to disagree and come to blows frequently, with the group changing membership many times over several films. Powers. The Avengers have an extremely wide range of powers in their team, which makes them a force to be reckoned with for any army trying to invade the Earth. Exposed to Dr. Erskine's super soldier serum after enlisting, Captain America has highly developed strength and stamina, as well as a nearly indestructible vibranium shield on top of his already formidable combat training. While he has no combat training, Tony Stark is an engineering genius who built his own suit of armor outfitted with an array of state-of-the-art weaponry, and he provides funding for the entire team. Thor, Prince of Asgard, has Mjolnir, a hammer so heavy only he can lift it, and can call down lightning from the sky when necessary. Black Widow and Hawkeye have years of espionage training and an array of gadgets, and the Hulk, well, he smashes. What they lack in training, the X-Men make up for by having diverse and powerful mutations. Mystique can shapeshift and assume any form she wants, making her an excellent infiltrator. Cyclops shoots powerful concussion beams from his eyes, and Wolverine is a near invulnerable outlet of rage and violence. And if Quicksilver isn't back home in his mother's basement, he can cause a devastating amount of damage before the enemy knows what hit them. However, their greatest asset may be their leader, Charles Xavier, who can control minds, causing enemies to freeze in place or do his bidding. The X-Men also have an invisible jet at their disposal, which, while lacking in weaponry, makes for an effective tool for a sneak attack. Weaknesses. As mentioned before, the Avengers have trouble getting along. In the first Avengers film, they came to blows with each other more frequently than the enemy. By the time the Age of Ultron rolled around, they were considerably more together as a team, but extremely vulnerable to psychological and psychic manipulation. And if one of their members turns against them, it tends to throw the whole team into disarray. Their battle strategies tend to be rather simplistic. Rushing forward into the fray is the go-to strategy for most of the team. And 3 times in a row, the Hulk has beaten up fellow Avengers during important battles. The X-Men, however, are mostly students. Unlike Captain America, Hawkeye, or Black Widow, none of the X-Men have any military training or experience. Because of this, their battles with other mutants tend to rely quite heavily on the mutants who have the best powers for the situation. And this allows the X-Men to be extremely vulnerable to mutants with strong enough abilities. In both X-Men First Class and Apocalypse, the entire X-Men team is beaten soundly by small groups of rogue mutants. And in X-Men 2, the entire world is put in danger when Charles Xavier is kidnapped and brainwashed. Fight. A fight between the two teams would be extremely taxing on both sides. The Avengers were able to keep New York from being completely destroyed by aliens, but those aliens were only an army of easily destroyed henchmen following a single demigod, Loki. The X-Men would represent a far more difficult foe because each member requires a different strategy to take down. The Avengers definitely have raw power on their side and certainly superior firepower from both Iron Man and War Machine. While Charles Xavier's mind control power could be devastating, it has been negated by specially designed headgear, which Tony Stark is probably capable of developing with the resources and knowledge he has. However, if Magneto chooses to join the X-Men in this fight, the weapons of the Avengers would be practically useless. Like Xavier's mind control, this possibility is only doable if the Avengers have advance warning of this coming fight. If the X-Men show up in their invisible jet with Magneto and Professor X and get the drop on the Avengers, this fight may be over before it even started. However, given sufficient time to prepare, this battle could very easily become a stalemate. We have yet to see how the Avengers will handle a powerful purple demigod, but they definitely have durability points on their side. The Avengers have been smashed, pummeled, and otherwise beaten to a pulp by multiple foes, and even their human members find a way to bounce back from life-threatening injuries. And the twin powers of Vision and Scarlet Witch may be enough to turn the tide against the more physically vulnerable X-Men. If the two of them can rip robots apart with their minds, will leather combat armor really be enough to protect X-Men like Cyclops? Whatever the result, one thing is for sure. Any city this fight takes place in should probably be evacuated.
Here's the 10 strongest X-Men villains ranked. Sebastian Shaw's mutant ability allows him to absorb any blows to his body completely. Shaw can go toe-to-toe with almost any powerhouse on the planet as long as they hit him first to provide him enough energy to return the favor. Sabretooth's strength may not be as impressive as some of the X-Men foes. Still, his threat ramps up when adding Creed's sheer brutality, razor-sharp claws, and adamantium skeleton. The Blob is another mutant whose abilities have been altered a few times over the years to increase his power levels. He was eventually depowered and returned to his normal strength levels, but always poses a threat. Holocaust was forced to constantly drain the life energy of others to sustain his form, so he wore a powerful suit of crystalline armor that made him an even bigger threat, but the armor was also a liability, as it could be cracked and destroyed. When Omega Red was reborn in a new body during the Krakoan Age, he gained the ability to increase his size by absorbing the life energy of living beings. This increased his strength exponentially and potentially limitlessly, provided he had enough victims to drain with his death factor. While Kane Marco has recently been a member in a good standing of more than one team of X-Men, he still spent years fighting them as one of their strongest villains. As Vulcan, Gabriel Summers can use his energy manipulation abilities to control the ambient energy of the world around him and the powers of other mutants and beings around him. Celestial technology enhanced his natural mutant abilities. His armor gave him additional powers that made him both a threat and leader to the X-Men at various times over the years. Nimrod was a powerful robot with the ability to analyze mutant abilities to adapt its own body with specific countermeasures. Nimrod also has a natural strength that he can increase as needed to face some of the X-Men's most powerful members. During the unforgettable Fatal Attraction event, Magneto's dark psyche infected Xavier, empowering a dark psychic entity. It became known as Onslaught and would endanger the entire Marvel universe on more than one occasion. Only when Onslaught sacrificed his physical form did Marvel's heroes finally gain an advantage and take down the powerful villain.
How exciting will it finally be to say that the X-Men are in the MCU? It feels like we've been waiting forever to see the Avengers and the X-Men clash, but that's because even though Disney now owns the rights to everyone's favorite mutants, they can't just plop them into an MCU movie with no context. Plus, the way they introduce these characters has to be different from what came before. So what's the best way for the MCU to bring in the X-Men? And more importantly, how will these characters differ from previous live-action iterations? Let's get into it right now.
Yes, I suggest we suit up.
In order to know your future, you have to understand the past. And no, I'm not just talking about our days of future past. Anyway, examining what did and did not work before is going to be the key to understanding how exactly to bring the X-Men into the MCU without face-planting. Because it's clear that although the previous X-Men franchise over at Fox had some incredible high points, it also was a little messy. And by a little messy, I mean a lot messy. It was a franchise that flat out ignored continuity, had a number of creative misses like somehow adapting the Dark Phoenix storyline once in X-Men The Last Stand, and it being mostly hated, then trying again to adapt it into a movie called Dark Phoenix and somehow making it almost worse, and also doing things like keeping actors looking the same age even though 30 years had passed. Man, the previous X-Men movies are wild. The point is, the characters need a proper reboot. One that sees a creative team handling it that's both patient and knows how to adapt the characters in slightly different ways in order to stand apart from previous live-action versions, but still keep their core characteristics intact. That's definitely not an easy task. In my mind, you can't just make a new X-Men film in the MCU. The franchise is just too big now where you can't make a movie with a whole team of superheroes without proper build-up, or else you'll be criticized that all the characters didn't have enough time to develop. I call this the Eternals problem. The MCU has proven that they can make just about any character interesting and engaging, but the biggest complaint is that there's not enough time with them. It's even trickier with the X-Men because they come with a whole lot of baggage. Not only are almost all of them worthy enough to be the lead of their own movies, they also have the weight of audiences' knowledge from the first time around, so more time needs to be spent establishing these new characters. Like, no, this isn't necessarily the Wolverine you spent like 35 movies watching and they have to establish why. But what's the best way to actually fold in the mutants to the MCU? Let's discuss the best option. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness promises to be a real game changer. Phase 4 of the MCU has been all about introducing the concept of the multiverse, and I think so far they've laid the groundwork rather well. They first took one of the MCU's most beloved villains in Loki and put him in his own show that ended with the reveal of potentially the MCU's next big multiversal baddie in the King the Conqueror variant, He Who Remains. But granted, not everyone watches TV, so for those that only stick to films, the multiverse concept was explained rather brilliantly in No Way Home by uniting all three Spider-Men in one film. That was a way for the MCU to tease the idea of multiple universes with different universe versions of the same character, all wrapped up in a fun, fan-servicey way. If there was ever a way to introduce the idea of a multiverse, No Way Home was it. So with that, I think it's safe to say that the multiverse is how the X-Men will be introduced in the MCU. It makes the most logical sense and ties into the overall story the MCU seems to be telling now. Like, not only does the multiverse sidestep any confusing questions about where the mutants have been the whole time in the main universe, but it sets the stage for a massive universal battle even more epic than the one we got in Endgame. Like, picture this, it's 8 years from now, and the MCU has built up to its finale of the multiversal war. Kang the Conqueror is on the verge of wiping out every universe except his own, so the main Avengers universe teams up with the Fantastic Four's universe and also the X-Men's universe to make one final stand. Come on, that would be amazing, right? And that all starts with introducing the X-Men in a different universe. So that brings me back to the Doctor Strange sequel. Remember how I said the X-Men should be gradually introduced instead of all front-loaded in one movie? Well, Multiverse of Madness could begin the mutant takeover by having Strange step over to a world where the mutants are prominent. Maybe he can cross paths with a new Professor X or even a new Wolverine? It doesn't have to be a major plotline, but just presents the idea that the mutants are out there and thriving on their own. Baby steps, people. And yeah, having the mutants exist in their own universe is the easiest thing to do in this situation, but are there other ways? Well, I've thought about this a lot, and although the multiverse makes perfect sense, especially now, I want to talk about some of the other options. I think one of the most predominant theories besides the multiverse was the idea that the mutants were actually in the MCU the whole time, only hiding in secret. Yeah, there are a ton of problems with this. Mainly how with the MCU as expansive and detailed as it is now, it's pretty preposterous that not only would the existence of mutants be a secret, but that they wouldn't step up and help during all the huge catastrophes Earth has faced. Like, I'm pretty sure the MCU has learned their lessons with the Eternals. The biggest question that arose from these characters getting their own movie is just where the heck were they when Thanos invaded? They tried to explain it the best they could, and honestly, the explanation was kind of dumb. They were instructed to never interfere unless deviants were attacking and threatening human life because they wanted human life to grow and expand on its own. But when a giant purple alien threatened to wipe out half the human population along with the rest of the universe, they also didn't want to help. There really isn't a logical explanation for that besides, hey, we didn't quite know we were making this movie yet. So I would bet that in the future, whenever the MCU wants to introduce a character or characters who supposedly have been super powerful for years and years, they'll just establish it as a different world. No need for that headache. So yes, overall the whole mutants exist in the main universe but are secret just doesn't make sense. And you want one more wrong theory? It's one that I thought would have been radical, but would have been the perfect situation if the whole multiverse angle didn't work out. So we all know that half the population blipped away and then snapped back, right? What if the MCU had gone with the idea that the ones who disappeared and reappeared came back different? Perhaps with their genetic code changed and now being what people considered mutants? That would mean mutants could be introduced in the modern day MCU without any issues regarding the past and also interact on a daily basis with the other Avengers. Yes, it would be hard with some of the mutants who have such a rich history like say Wolverine or Magneto, but I think there would have been ways around that. For example, say Magneto had his same backstory like he always does regarding horrible atrocities of World War II, but never could do anything about it, but then finds himself suddenly with a mastery over metal and stronger than he's ever been before. What would the storyline be then? Okay, fine. Again, this is probably too radical and the multiverse angle works a lot better, but it's kind of fun to think about, right? So there's been a lot of talk about how the X-Men joined the MCU, but I wanted to take a second to talk about what happens when they're actually here. Because frankly, I'm a little worried. I know the prospect of seeing Wolverine fighting the Hulk or Storm have a presence in Wakanda or things like that is truly super exciting for the MCU. But doesn't it sort of feel like too much? For the longest time, even when the Fox X-Men movies were bad and people complained about superhero oversaturation, it was still organized. You had your Disney Marvel characters on one side and your Fox Marvel characters on the other, and besides the occasional Quicksilver, it allowed for both universes to thrive a bit with a deep well of characters and complex histories. Combining those all into one super franchise is mind-boggling and fun, but feels crowded. Like, think about it. Right now, we're operating around 3 MCU movies a year, plus a whole gaggle of TV shows. If the X-Men became a popular franchise, where would they fit in? Would we get one X-Men movie in 2 years or so, and then afterwards another one 3 years later? Would you just have the X-Men in their own film, or would you have solo films like Fox did with Wolverine? Technically, you could have solo films for all the major X-Men, and then lead up to an official X-Men film, but how much would that take away from other MCU properties? It's a daunting task that I'm not exactly sure how to make work. The X-Men are a whole team of mutants. That's already a lot. Then you also have to factor in things like the Fantastic Four as well. Could the MCU potentially collapse under its own weight? Well, I guess not if the focus stays on adapting these characters in the best way possible. So for the next few entries, I wanted to focus on some individual X-Men characters and how I think they should be adapted in the MCU. First up, I have to talk about Wolverine. Look, Hugh Jackman had an amazing run as the cigar-chomping Canadian. He was very clearly the face of the X-Men franchise, and for good reason. His performance is so iconic that Wolverine is perhaps the hardest mutant to recast in the MCU. And I'm sure there's a lot of you out there that wishes that Hugh Jackman would just continue playing the character forever, but that's just not likely. We need a Wolverine for the next 10-ish years, and sadly Hugh Jackman just didn't work long term. So how do you recreate a character that was already so beloved? Well, in this case, you can just make Wolverine more comic accurate. For one, you can make him a side character in all the future X-Men movies. I think the Fox movies got too focused on being centered around Wolverine instead of the rest of the team, and putting him in a supporting role might be a nice change of pace. Plus, how about we actually make him 5'3" like he is in the comics? I want a shorter, stockier version of Wolverine. Is that asking too much? Cyclops has been the butt of too many jokes thanks to the Fox movies. Those original films made Cyclops a boring third wheel to the Wolverine and Jean Grey romance, and then because James Marsden was busy filming Superman Returns, playing another third wheel, they wrote Cyclops out in the most embarrassing way possible super early in The Last Stand. That really soured people's view of the character, and although they tried to fix that in the new rebooted Fox series with a younger Cyclops, those movies just weren't good enough to truly change anyone's mind. So my overall suggestion with an MCU version of Cyclops is to make him the central character. He should be the leader of the X-Men like he is in the comics, and also be the main X-Man that's interacting with all the other Avengers. Cyclops has amazing stories and is one of the best X-Men comic characters, and it's about time the live-action movies stepped up and did him justice. So if the MCU is building up a new franchise around the X-Men, Cyclops, not Wolverine, should be the face of it. Magneto in the MCU is extremely tricky now. His backstory regarding the internment camps and World War II are so vital in who he is, but that's hard when the MCU will be like in 2025 when the X-Men get a full introduction. Magneto is generally born in 1930, but even if they aged him up and said 1940, that would still place him in his 80s to start his MCU journey. That's just too much. There's a few ways the MCU could work around this without changing his backstory. They could pull a Steve Rogers and say that Magneto was frozen or something similar for like 30 years before waking up. They could pull a Mystique and say that his metal powers somehow slow his aging down. Or they could do something a little wild and set the X-Men universe in the past. Like, who's to say that all universes followed the same timeline? What if when they discover the X-Men universe, it's still like 1975 or something similar? That way you can have a definite different vibe between this universe and the main MCU universe and still keep all the characters' backstories, including Magneto's, the same. I like that idea because it allows the MCU to make Avengers movies in the present day in one universe, but then play around with the 70s and 80s more in the X-Men universe. So I have another question. Which mutants that we've seen before should have a new chance in the MCU? Like, should the X-Men team be more in line with the original comic lineup? I know the OG Fox movies got us used to Wolverine, Cyclops, Jean Grey, and Storm with supporting turns from characters like Rogue, Nightcrawler, and Iceman, but what if the new X-Men team consisted mainly of Cyclops, Beast, Marvel Girl, Angel, and Iceman? I definitely think both Angel and Iceman could do with a character revamp in the MCU, don't you? I mean, really, there's no shortage of mutants to choose from. So with the X-Men properly introduced and making a huge splash, the question becomes just what stories should they tell? The X-Men comics are packed with some amazing arcs and storylines that the MCU should definitely consider bringing to live action. Of course, their most famous arc is probably the Dark Phoenix saga, but seriously, after 2 attempts, let's not go there again. Maybe you can introduce the concept of the Phoenix Force because that's important to the Marvel Universe, but please, just hold off on adapting that particular story, okay? What else? Well, we can probably also cross off Days of Future Past because that was objectively one of the best X-Men films we've seen, and I doubt we'll also follow Logan to Japan anytime soon. What does that leave? Well, even though the Dark Phoenix saga flopped and should be left alone, the Apocalypse storyline would be nice to see with a new perspective. Especially now that Kang the Conqueror is out there, the Apocalypse character just became way more interesting to see again. Probably the best new story to introduce would be the House of X and Powers of X storylines, which basically relaunched the X-Men for today. You can't do everything with that arc, but there's ways to adapt to key elements there for something really fun. And maybe you can't start immediately with the E is for Extinction story arc, but that's also something the new MCU mutants should have to deal with eventually. The idea of the X-Men in the MCU operating as their own independent team is super exciting, yes, but let's end this with discussing what makes having them in the MCU so much fun to begin with. It's the crossovers. We'll definitely have a good time seeing Cyclops and Professor X fighting Magneto or Mr. Sinister or whoever, but that all exists in a bubble. What happens when the X-Men start interacting with our already established MCU characters? Maybe Cyclops and Sam Wilson's Captain America will butt heads over leading their respective teams and not quite know how to work together. Maybe Wanda will find out that a different version of her father is Magneto and have to grapple with that aspect. Maybe in this X-Men universe, the Hulk is a dangerous wild beast and we have to watch Wolverine track him down in order to take him out. There's just so many fun possibilities, and that all starts with the X-Men being introduced in the MCU. Oh, and Deadpool 2, I guess? He'd tag along with the other X-Men somehow. I know he's not a traditional mutant, but he kind of counts, right? I don't know, I just want to see him team up with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Or probably Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. Any Spider-Man will do. I just want to see a Spidey and Deadpool team up. If that's the side effect of introducing mutants in the MCU, then I'm all for it. It doesn't matter how smart Tony is or how tricky or how sarcastic or how quippy Tony Stark is in the situation. When you're facing down the unrelenting rage of Wolverine who wants to do everything in your power to destroy you, Wolverine is going to overcome no matter what. Welcome to a very special episode of CBR Saga, CBR's one and only podcast, and boy, do we have a fun episode for you. Today, we're debating just who would win between the Avengers and the X-Men. Who would win between Wolverine versus Iron Man, Captain America versus Cyclops, Storm versus Thor? That's what we're here today to find out. We'll start with these one-on-one battles for each of our favorite heroes and then move to a massive 3v3 battle, so it's going to be huge. I'm joined by my co-host Nick. Nick, how you doing today?
Doing good, Jacoby. Ready to kick some butt, as it were.
All right, I see it. You're confident. You're cocky. You're ready to go. So overall, audience, Nick has all these Avengers characters. He has Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor, and I have X-Men characters: Wolverine, Cyclops, and Storm. And now we're going to pit them against each other in 1v1 fights. So keep in mind, this is what we've seen from the movies, not necessarily the comics, because if we use the comics, things might get a little overcomplicated. But we're going to have a fun time. Nick, are you ready for this?
I'm ready for this. Let's do it.
All right, we're going to start with the big one, Wolverine versus Iron Man. I have Wolverine in this fight. Nick has Iron Man. And I just got to say, I'm going to start off right here. I think Wolverine would destroy Iron Man, for like a simple reason, too. You remember how easily Thanos stabbed Tony on Titan in Infinity War? Wolverine's adamantium claws would do like the exact same thing. Pierce Tony's armor and get into that, that fleshy, gooey human part. It may take a few strikes, but Wolverine can endure anything Tony throws at him enough to get close and stab him and win. Wolverine wins.
Incorrect, Jacoby. I would like to point out that moment you're talking about with Thanos where he stabbed him. One, Tony didn't die. He fixed himself. He's okay. But two, you're talking about one of the smartest people in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and probably the smartest person if we were to bring him over to the X-Men universe. You're talking about a guy in a universe where adamantium exists. You don't think he's making a suit out of adamantium? Like the Silver Samurai did in the Wolverine? He had nothing against that.
I think Tony is too preoccupied with he thinks his nanotech is going to be the best thing. He sees his nanotech ability all surrounded about him, full, and he thinks he's safe, and then, no, it's not going to work because adamantium is such a hard, dense metal. It's a horrible thing to make a suit out of. That is not what the type of style that Tony Stark is when he fights, and that's why Wolverine is such a great weapon against Tony Stark, because he is this brute force, dense person who's just going to walk up and repel any attack that Tony Stark uses and get in close and, take him out with a few well-placed strikes.
I think Tony's style, like you said, is to adapt to the fighter he is fighting. That's why we see him wear Hulkbuster armor. That's why we see him make all these different suits in Iron Man 3 that each have like different abilities depending on who he's fighting. So I think it's perfectly reasonable to think Iron Man could make a suit out of adamantium that Wolverine couldn't necessarily pierce. The problem Iron Man's going to have is getting over Wolverine's healing factor, obviously. But I think the guy's smart. I think there's a way he could come around it. It was sort of hinted in X-Men Origins Wolverine that if you cut a healer's head off, maybe that does the job. I think Tony could figure that out. Plus, Tony keeps his distance. Wolverine can't even get near him.
But Wolverine is just this unrelenting force keeping moving forward. Tony Stark's whole fighting style is blasters, blasting, repulsing, all these beams that he shoots at him. That's Tony's go-to things. How does that work against someone who literally that bounces off of and he keeps going? Look at how much pain Wolverine withstood in The Last Stand when Phoenix was blasting all that dark energy, dissolving him, and he was coming back instantly. You think all that Phoenix energy is not as powerful as Tony Stark's blast? No, the Phoenix stuff is way more powerful. Anything Tony shoots at him, and even as he tries to keep his distance, isn't going to work because Wolverine is just going to go into a berserker rage and just just Wolverine out and use his intense speed and his agility and his anger just to get in close and take him out when it's necessary.
In a one-on-one fight with no technology, obviously Wolverine wins this, but you're talking about a guy, Tony Stark, with given time can solve anything. He literally saved the entire universe from a guy who wanted to kill half of it. Tony would think of a way to overcome Wolverine's healing factor. He would study it. He might trap Wolverine. He can trap Wolverine the way he tried to trap Hulk. It didn't work, but he could figure out a way to keep Wolverine subdued and study him and figure out a way to overcome his healing factor.
That's it. You said it right there. You said he tried to subdue the Hulk. It didn't work. When he tries to subdue Wolverine, it's not going to work because you can't contain the beast or else the beast gets angry. I believe Wolverine said that at one point. Wolverine can. It doesn't matter how smart Tony is or how tricky or how sarcastic or how quippy Tony Stark is in the situation. When you're facing down the unrelenting rage of Wolverine who wants to do everything in your power to destroy you, Wolverine is going to overcome it no matter what.
Tony Stark did stop the Hulk. He didn't trap him, like I said at the beginning of that fight in Age of Ultron, but he did end up stopping him. He overcame the strongest being in the universe, the Incredible Hulk. He can definitely overcome the rage of Wolverine and subdue him long enough to figure out how to overcome his healing ability.
Okay, fine. All I'm saying is that I think it's going to be a close fight when you're up against, when you have the smartest, quippiest man in the galaxy versus this unrelenting force of nature. But who do you guys think wins? Who would win between Tony Stark and Iron Man? Because I don't think we can decide that, so let's kind of move on to our next 1v1 fight. This is going to be the leaders of the team, Captain America versus Cyclops. Who wins between these two? Nick, you can start us off.
I will start because one of these two has died and the other has not. Captain America clearly wins this. He's the better tactician in the field. He leads the Avengers, not only in the Avengers, but also in Civil War. He clearly has strategy in battle down pat. And he's the guy who just keeps going. If you want to blast him with Cyclops' ray vision or whatever, just think of that moment in the Avengers where he gets hit with the Chitauri blast and Thor asks him to get up and he says, "What, you getting sleepy?" Cap is a guy that will keep going. His shield would definitely hold up against Cyclops, and he has the upper hand on him in combat.
In combat, sure, if he's close to close, yeah, but the problem is Captain America is not a ranged fighter. He has one attack. He throws his shield and kind of hopes that it comes back to him. If Cyclops can find a way to negate that, then it's game over. And I think absolutely the force of Cyclops' laser blast, you just called him the ray things or whatever, put some respect on Cyclops' laser blast, sir. That if the shield is thrown at him and he uses his laser blast to stop it, the laser blasts are going to win. The shield is going to stop. And then Captain America has no range attack. Then it doesn't matter how much Cap can do this all day or how many blasts that he can take because he's not getting close to Cyclops enough to take him out. It's like if he keeps Captain at a distance, that's the number one advantage against Cap is distance. And that's what Cyclops is meant for. That's what his power's for. And even though he's not as great as a tactician as he is in the comics because the Fox franchise totally ruined the tactician side of him. It doesn't matter when all you have to do is keep Cap at a reasonable space and keep blasting him until he stays down forever.
Listen, Cyclops' laser pointers couldn't even kill old man Magneto in the original X-Men. He blasts him in the shoulder and he just gets up and he's fine. Cap's shield can definitely withstand the blasts of Cyclops. And all he has to do is create a distraction because Cyclops only has one thing he can shoot at a time. All Cap's got to do is create a distraction. He gets in close. He wins hand-to-hand easily because Cyclops is not a hand-to-hand fighter. His whole gimmick is keep people at a distance because that's how he blasts them. But his blasts aren't even that strong. Vibranium would definitely hold up against it. Cap, being the smart statistician that the MCU movies made him, they didn't blow that with Captain America. He would definitely think of a plan to distract Scott for a little bit, enough to get in close and subdue him and easily win. Cap wins this hands down.
If it's just them on the field, just him and them, then there's no way that Cyclops is going to get distracted. The movies only made him distracted because Jean Grey kept showing up and just ruining him and Wolverine. But if it's just him, completely focused on the battle, then there's no way that he's going to be distracted. There's no way he's going to let a trick be pulled over on him. There's no way he's going to let Captain America get close. Captain America may throw his shield, and I'm not saying the shield is going to be destroyed by it. All I'm saying is that if Captain America throws his shield, which is his only ranged attack that he has, the blasts are going to stop it, and it's going to stop the shield in its tracks. And then Captain Captain America doesn't have a shield, or he has to pick it up and try again, and it's not going to work. And even if he does get close, and even if the focus laser blasts don't work against him, then Scott has the ability to completely unleash. If he takes off his visor, if he lets his full power unleash upon itself, if Captain America is beating him to a pulp and he knocks his visor thing off, then it's going to be a bad day for everyone involved. Because look what it does when it's not restrained. It destroys everything in its path, and that's what it's going to turn it's going to melt Capsicle, the former Capsicle, into a pile of dust.
This little kid from Brooklyn took a punch from the Mad Titan Thanos. I guarantee you he can handle Scott's laser blast, which all we've seen them destroy in the movies is a tree when he couldn't control it. He destroyed Charles Xavier's favorite tree. That's it. Cap is much tougher than a tree. Cap can take a blast, and he will be. You say he hopes his shield comes back to him. He knows it's coming back to him because he throws it in a way, because he's so dynamic with his shield. He knows it comes back to him because he wants it to. There's no way Cap loses. His shield can protect against the blast. Even if it doesn't, he can create a distraction with his shield. So while Scott's busy blasting the shield, that's when Cap moves in to finish the job.
Overall, though, I just think this would be a good fight. This would be a very interesting fight, because if it's the Cyclops we've seen from the movies, that this is finally his chance to shine. We have the final fight, the big one between some good weather people. It's Storm versus Thor, and I guess I'll start it because you started off the last one. I'll start off this one. I know Storm is the underdog here, and this one is going to be a tough battle, but here's why I think Storm would win overall. Thor's getting dumber and more traumatized as these movies go on. If this is current Thor, the Thor that we know right now, then Thor will not be focused on his surroundings, and it's the surroundings that are going to disorient and defeat Thor when Storm brings in all of her magical weather abilities to completely disrupt the atmosphere and surrounding around her to distract Thor long enough to win.
The man helped kill Thanos. He said, let's kill him properly this time. He grabbed 2 hammers, and then he went and he took care of business. This guy is a guy who's been fighting for 1,500 years. He also controls an aspect of the weather. Lightning would have no effect on him. He is the god of thunder. And if Thor, again, similar to Cyclops and Captain America, if Thor gets even close, there's not even a comparison between their hand-to-hand combat. Storm can use all the weather she wants to try and keep him away, but Thor has fought on the fields of Jotunheim. He's fought in the bitter cold. He's fought in extreme heat. He's fought in everything. I don't think there's anything Storm can do to keep Thor at bay.
What she can do is destroy who he is deep down and hurt him where he is obviously vulnerable, which is his psyche. Because look at what happened in Thor Ragnarok. Specifically, he learned that he was, the god of thunder and lightning, that he didn't need his hammer to channel all this energy and lightning to him. So he thinks that that's his big thing. So when he uses the lightning and Storm literally sucks that away from it and controls the lightning that he's producing, that is going to break Thor down and send him into another traumatized state where he goes searching for the cheese whiz, because he's like, oh, the one thing that I could control. It's like, I can't even control. There's someone who can control that to me. How am I going to come back to that? No, she's going to break Thor down, and with the use of the lightning and robbing that from Thor, and win this fight.
Listen, Thor watched his mother die, his father die, his brother die, and he still was in a fighting mood. He still took on Thanos in Wakanda. Yes, he didn't go for the head, but he won that fight. I think Thor, noticing that someone else has the power to control lightning, wouldn't quite be enough to take him out of the fight emotionally. I think Storm would have to kill half of the universe in order for Thor to be in the mental state we see him in Endgame. And I don't think Storm can do that. I think Thor, without the lightning, he doesn't need the lightning. Thor uses, without the hammer, he doesn't need the hammer. Thor wins in a fight. We see this in Thor Ragnarok when he fights the Hulk. Even before he gets the big lightning strike, Thor is going hand-to-hand in combat with the Hulk. And if you're going to tell me Storm can fight the Hulk hand-to-hand, I'm going to tell you you're wrong.
And I get it. I 100% agree that hand-to-hand combat is not going to be Storm's strengths. But what the Storm's real true strength is the atmosphere around it. And I think that's something that Thor has shown to not be advisable. Because sure, he goes straight in and he starts attacking, he starts wailing, and he doesn't focus on what's going on around him while it's happening. Storm is going to create all the fog, the tsunamis, the hurricanes, everything weather-wise, just to completely throw Thor off and keep him off his game long enough to disorient him enough to suck the air right out of him. Because Asgardians still need need to breathe. That is as strong as Thor is. He still needs oxygen. He still needs to breathe the air that's kind of around him, and even if it's enhanced and he can survive a little bit in space, Storm literally sucks all the oxygen out from underneath him, from inside of him. Then Storm's going to win this fight.
Doesn't Storm need to breathe also? Wouldn't they be in the same?
All she's doing is she's taking the oxygen from Thor, not from the area around him, from a little bubble around Thor's head, and making it so he can't breathe, so he's maybe a little weaker. And then while the tsunamis and the hurricanes and the fog are just keeping him out of there, it makes Thor disoriented. He has no more lightning anymore, so that he can't use because Storm is using it, and it throws him all off, and it makes him kind of give up.
Hey, Thor's no one-trick pony. He's not just the lightning guy. Remember, in the original Thor, he creates his own cyclone and defeats the Destroyer that way. Thor knows his way around the weather as well. I think if Thor gets close enough to Storm, she can't create the bubble that sucks away the oxygen. Even if she does, we've seen Thor survive in space, like you said. Even if she does create that bubble, that still gives Thor a good 10 minutes, half hour, however long he was floating in space to survive and focus long enough to defeat Storm.
Well, agree to disagree, sir. I think Storm could easily take on Thor, but I guess who do you guys think would win and who would come out on top? So let's get into kind of our final thing, because we've been talking about one-on-one battles for a bit, but now let's do something fun and put them on the same team as each other, like a 3-on-3 battle. Who do you think would work best as a team, as a cohesive unit fighting together, and who could overcome the other team? You can start this one. I'll allow it.
As I said in one of the previous fights, we have the premier battle tactician in Captain America. We've seen him prove it in the Avengers with the way he calls out the team and assigns them positions. We've seen it in Captain America Civil War. We've seen it in Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. Captain America is the clear best leader of a team among these 6 people. So he does that. He has Tony securing the perimeter. He has Tony keeping at a distance. And he has Thor being the big guns. Cap clearly knows how to use these team members. They've been fighting together for long enough that I think Cap being on my team gives my 3v3 the advantage.
See, I think that's your problem right there, because you say that Cap is the best leader of them, and I agree with that. Of these 6 people, Cap is the best leader, but his team that he has to lead is full of these separate personalities. I think overall, I think you have you have Cap doing his thing, you have Tony Stark who is going to do his own thing, and you have Thor who's going to want to do his own thing. And it's incredibly difficult to rein them in and fight as a 3x3 team, and that's why I think my team actually has the advantage, because their powers actually complement everything in the situation that you need. They have the strength. They have strategy and environment kind of all locked down. So like Storm could disrupt like Tony's sensors and everything and the whole environment with this extreme weather conditions that makes it very difficult to fight. Cyclops can keep Thor and Cap at bay with his very powerful, very strong, laser beams. And if they do get close, Wolverine can stab and hunt them because of his, predatory senses that isn't disrupted by the weather. That makes it easier for him to see all in Storm's weather. So I think as a team, as a unit, my 3 people work so much better than yours.
Okay, if you're talking about a lack of chemistry, a lack of mixing on the team, you're going to tell me that Tony and Cap are worse than Cyclops and Wolverine? All they do for 3 movies is fight. They don't get along. They don't work well together. That will not happen. Storm will spend all of her time trying to rein those 2 in and get them to work together, but it's not going to work because they never do. Here's what's going to happen. The first thing Tony did when making a suit was freeze when he got too high. I'm sure he can adjust to inclement weather. I'm sure he will have made a suit that will be prepared for all weather situations. Thor is clearly the best fighter on the team here. Thor is the one who creates those distractions I talked about when Cap was fighting Cyclops one-on-one. Cyclops gets distracted once, one of the other 3 people takes him out easy, and then it's a 2-on-3 fight. There's no way Cyclops lasts long in this 3v3 fight. And then Storm, like I said, not only will she be distracted with the other members of her team, but we have 2 people. Iron Man and Thor can easily withstand whatever weather she wants to throw at them, and they can take her out together. I think it's a pick them off one by one, and then we have Wolverine left. Guess what? The 3 people left, all they got to do is trap him and wait for him to die of old age and adamantium poisoning.
That's a horrible way to win the battle. But see, overall, it just seems like your argument is each one working individually and going against each other. And that's not true teamwork. Yeah, I would say that Wolverine and Cyclops can at least work better together, because sure, they gripe at each other, but they never came to blows. They never almost killed each other. They never almost destroyed the entire world because they couldn't get over their differences. These are two very stubborn, very strong-willed, very different men who cannot work together in the long term when it comes to strategy and thinking about what's right. They're going to think about how to approach this battle in completely different ways, and that's going to cause conflict, and that's going to cause a rift, and that's going to make them disorient enough for the strong teamwork of my X-Men team to fully swoop in and do that, because Thor is the big gun here on your team. If Thor is there, then it's going to be a problem, but there's enough of a way to keep Thor off balance with Storm's weather, with Cyclops blasts, and even if Wolverine's claws need to get close, where Wolverine can at least take out Captain America and Iron Man, and then it's just those three against Thor, and I think together, my three people can take out Thor, or at least incapacitate him enough to win this fight in the end.
I disagree. You say they fought. Yes, they fought in Civil War. They didn't make up in time for Infinity War, but this team proves they can work together in Avengers Endgame. They've proved that they can get the job done together as a team. Not only do they have the best chemistry when fighting together, but you see it in the way they combine their weapons. Tony will fire his blasters off Cap's shield. Thor will hit Cap's shield with his hammer and create a sonic wave. That is just signs that these people know how to work together. They know who each other is as a team, and they know how to fight together. They will work together. They will work together to take out Cyclops. Once Cyclops is out, they will work together to take out Storm. Storm will only be distracted by Tony while Thor and Cap go up behind her. It's all teamwork. It's not people acting individually.
Well, I guess this is just going to be another thing that we just can't agree on. So 3v3, who do you guys think would win between Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor versus Wolverine, Cyclops, and Storm? I think it's going to be a good battle either way. Sure, some people have more advantages than other, when you have a little Asgardian on your team. But I think overall, I think it would be a good fight.